Millar, and it's called Perfectly Ordinary Dreams, and I thought I'd read one of those to you. This is Perfectly Ordinary Dreams, number 1620, dated August 17th, 1925. The imagination could thrive in worse places in the world. It had become this particular newlyweds couple's best interest to spend whole days hiding in the most expensive bookstores in town. No one ever bothered them there, and they were free to hug and kiss in the most exciting ways between the shelves. Occasionally they would browse through a poetry volume or two, but they found them dull and vile. They preferred returning to each other's company, perhaps foolishly over a blueberry muffin and apple juice at the snack counter. They were in love at each moment in the bookstore, happy to be holding hands and smiling, ignoring all the literature of the world. On one occasion, they both noticed Edward de Vere standing at one of the shelves, admiring his more recently published books. They exchanged a glance of concern. Both were wondering, as young couples might, why such a man would appear in this bookstore. Surely he was entirely out of place. In a room filled with characters dressed in the traditional neon-colored garments of that country, he seemed a parody of history, wearing his 16th century wool knickers and vest, the long, ruffled Elizabethan coat, and a pair of thin black leather shoes. Even his hairstyle added to his ridiculous costume, somewhat longish, as though he were wearing a wig. It was tied at the back of his head with a velvet ribbon showing the weariness of age. The couple suddenly remembered the $5. They began to drift towards the door, shielding their faces as best they could with any available pamphlets, sticks, or newspapers. De Vere spotted them, however, and intercepted them in the front of the store. He immediately demanded the return of his $5, exclaiming, "How is one to eat if everyone is constantly removing money from his person? A man has to eat, or poetry is nothing." And he began slapping the young man about the face, though without any real violence, for when one is dealing in magic, violence can only be erotic. Despite this, the young man did in fact find himself growing somewhat annoyed, for De Vere squealed $5 very loudly in a high-pitched voice for almost half an hour as he continued his assault. In a fit of exasperation, the young man suddenly grabbed Edward de Vere about the waist and lifted him. He was so light, the young man thought, upon his shoulders. And much to the rage and hollering of the great poet, $5! $5! The young man began to spin around and around on the sidewalk in front of the bookstore. The scene is very quiet. It is only the young man and Edward de Vere. No one else dares enter the picture. At last, the constant spinning became too much for the young man, and de Vere was ejected from his shoulders, landing in a crumpled heap in the gutter of the street where he lay for some time, until a smile surfaced on his ragged face. Standing, he straightened his collar, for he wore no tie, gave many thanks to the young man for his hospitality, and bid him good day. The fun thing about writing those dream poems is they were actually dreams that I had, but then I just plopped in all kinds of fun names. I like the one where Al Purdy's busy in the bathroom for a long time.